All right, in this video, I'm going to be explaining the concept of a cold call batting average and why this is going to be so helpful for measuring and improving your cold call results, especially as a new SDR or anyone looking to improve their cold calling in general, or anyone that's looking to get over cold call anxiety and taking each individual cold call so personally. This is meant to be a formula and a process to get better within. And today we're going to be talking how to bat 300 when it comes to cold calls. So let's get into it. So first, beyond cold calling, to get better at most things in life, you can't just leave it up to chance. You have to have a process that you're measuring and you can get better within. And it's no different in cold calling. The way to get better at cold calling is to not just make a whole bunch of cold calls and then hope all of a sudden you start getting better at it. You need to find the small areas at the margin that you can get better at and improve that will make a huge difference over the long run. So an analogy I like to use and why I refer to this as a batting average is think about professional baseball players in the MLB. They don't head into a season thinking, how am I going to bat 800 this season? What do I need to do to get there? They're thinking, how do I take my 250 batting average last year and get that to 275, or taking that 275 batting average and getting that to 300. That's literally going to be the difference of millions of dollars for them, but that's not that big of a difference going from 250 to 275, going from every 10 at bats you get a hit 2.5 times out of 10 to 2.75 times out of 10. The way they do that is they make small tweaks at the margin. Where can they improve? Where am I strongest in the strike zone? Studying the competition. What pitches do they typically throw on what counts? How can I get as many quality shots on net as possible? Another example, if you're not a baseball fan, would be the NBA. Think about the difference between being a 30% three-point field goal shooter to a 38% three-point field goal shooter. That is the difference of tens of millions of dollars, but that's going from basically 3 out of 10 to 4 out of 10. And it's the same thing in cold calling. The difference from booking 2 out of every 10 lives and having a 200 cold call batting average to 3 out of 10 is massive. You've just increased your results by 50%. You're booking 50% more meetings. Think about all the additional opportunities and potential closed revenue that can come by booking 50% more meetings over a long period of time. But on a day-by-day basis, you might not even notice that. You might go 0 for 10 3 days in a row and think that you're sucking, when in reality, if you're actually measuring this process, you would see, oh no, I'm actually getting better over time. So the way to kick off this process is, instead of using a cold call script, you deliver a value statement. I'm going to link to an example video where I deliver a value statement so you can see what that looks like. But there's a key difference between a value statement and a cold call script. A value statement is where you take control out of the gate. You do most of the talking. You get that formality from the prospect, and then you tell them who you are, why you're calling, and what you want, which is time on their calendar, ideally within the first 60 seconds. Then you will have entered this process that you can begin to measure. You can calculate, when I make that who, why, what statement and ask for time on their calendar, what percent of the time do I just get a yes right out of the gate? Like, yeah, Connor, that sounds great. Thanks for reaching out. Yeah, I'm free next Wednesday. Let's book the meeting. Let's say out of every 10 lives you get, 1 out of 10, that's all you need, say yes right out of the gate. So 100 of your batting average just comes from that. Now, let's say most of the time you get a hard no. They hang up on you. They say, not a good fit, not the right person, whatever. Let's say that accounts for 7 times out of 10. So to get to a 300 batting average, most of the time you're still going to be getting rejected. Just like the baseball players, the Hall of Fame baseball players go back to the dugout with their head down 7 times out of 10 if they're batting 300. The majority of the time they're losing. It's the same thing in cold calling. So that accounts for 2 out of the 3 outcomes. If you make that value statement, who, why, what, and ask for time on their calendar, they can either give you a yes, they can give you a hard no, which is like being hung up on, and then the only other outcome, if they don't do one of those 2 things, is to give you an objection, a reason for why they can't or don't want to take the meeting. Then the objective becomes, how can we handle as high of a percentage of these objections as possible? How can we be prepared for them? So to get to a 300 batting average, if you're booking 1 out of 10 just right off the value statement by saying who, why, what, if you can handle 2 out of the 10 objections that you get on live calls, you're at a 300 batting average. But beyond just keeping track of how many meetings you book and whether it was a straight up yes out of the gate or whether you book the meeting by handling an objection, you can take it a layer deeper and look at what are the most common objections I receive and what percentage of the time am I handling those. What of this 200 of the batting average comes from each of these objections? Maybe 0.7075 of it comes from we work with a competitor. Maybe another 0.075 comes from we don't have the budget right now. And maybe we have other priorities, there's no bandwidth right now, only accounts for 0.05. So then beyond just thinking about whether you're good or bad at handling objections at a high level, you can look at individually which objections am I better or worse at handling and where do I need to focus in practice. You ideally should have the most common objections that you face. Usually the top 5, in my experience, will account for 80 to 90% of the most common objections you receive. So I just put 3 common ones here. We already work with a competitor. Hey, we don't have the budget right now, or we have other priorities, no bandwidth right now. And if you can be prepared for and practice how you will handle those when you get it, you can work on increasing these. So in this scenario, you probably need to work on handling we have other priorities in that specific objection. But that's how you can work and tweak. And if you get better, maybe you turn this into 250. I'm just using clean round numbers here. It's going to be a 300 batting average, may be realistic in one industry and not realistic at all in a different industry. I work in tech sales. I would say if you're booking 3 meetings out of every 10 lives, that actually is a good comparison to baseball where you're killing it if you're doing it. That's like Hall of Fame level, where 2 out of 10 is like okay, and then most people are somewhere in between if they're fairly good. The other beauty of this process that I personally experienced was it helped me not take cold calls so personally. I still get hung up on all the time. I still get told, take a hike, never call me back. All the time. It's never going away. But when that happens now, I'm not taking it so personally. It just becomes a hard no. It almost becomes fun to track. It makes it a fun process where you can see and explain your results and figure out where you need to get better. And then that's what you can work on with your peers or your manager. And you will see your results tick up drastically over time if you're actually consistent with this. And it's not hard to track. You can keep track of it in an Excel spreadsheet. I just think most people make the mistake there's a lot of proactive reps that will keep track of how many meetings they book when they get a live call. But I think it's smarter to take it a layer deeper and figure out from a value statement standpoint, how many yeses do I get? How many hard no's do I get? And then measure the specific objections you get and where you need to focus. But the key to all of this is the value statement. It's taking control at the outset of the call. You do most of the talking at the outset. A lot of training out there says that you should be doing the one listening and they should be doing more of the talking. I do not think that is true on cold calls. I think on discovery calls, that is very true. You want the prospect to feel heard. And generally, when I've run successful discovery calls, it usually starts off with a long monologue from them about their problems and why they set up the call or why they took the call, and they feel heard. On cold calls, their default setting is to be defensive. Most people don't like cold calls, and rather than trying to build rapport, I think the best way to build rapport is to make a value statement that you've been here and done this and you're someone worth listening to, and they'll very quickly forget that this is a cold call if you start speaking concisely. And then this process kicks off. Once you make the value statement and they ask for time on their calendar, there's only 3 possible outcomes from there. It's either a yes, a hard no, or an objection, and these are all things that you can measure and a process that you can get better within. So hope this helped. If it did, hit the like button, and I'll see you on the next one.